Hi guys, this is Wireheadking, and today I'm going to be showing you how to apply some shaders to the bigger parts of this prison. So things like the floor, balcony, walls, ceiling, just all the big bits. And then in the next part we'll be doing some of these smaller bits and pieces, so the debris on the floor, the bars on the prison, although they're really straightforward. We could probably do them in this part if we have time. Things like the lights, etc. So let's get started. So before we work on the shaders, I think it's probably best if we sort of get the rough camera angle and lighting set up for this scene. So if we just select the camera and just move it forwards a bit, or in fact what we could do is press Shift F while in camera view, and then we can go in this sort of Skyrim kind of mode and just kind of, there we go, yeah, there we go, just plop it in right where it looks good. So there. Does that look good? There. Nice. So all you have to do is, like I said, press Shift F, you can move around, and then you can just click when you find a good angle. Oh, it's just completely undone it for me. Hold on, let me just get back to there. Okay. So this is the angle I'm going with. What we need to do now is work on the lighting. So first of all, if we go to the environment settings, just set this to black. Click on use nodes as well if you want, but make sure this is just black, strength 0 just to be extra sure, because we do not want any environment lighting. I didn't use any HDRI images or anything for this. All I used was a plane. Okay, this plane is going to be one of possibly two lights. I did have some lights up at the back of the cells because they were way too dark. It was just behind the bars, just pure blackness. But this is going to be the main light. It's just this plane. If we give it a new material, call it light. Oh, capital letters, that's fine, cool. Set this to emission, like so, and then set the strength to 50. And that seems like a lot, but considering the size of the scene, it's an okay amount. Alright, so if we just move it behind the window, maybe you just bring these bars in a bit, like so, just so they're sort of more placed on the window. And then just make this plane nice and big, like so. Okay, and now if we look at this rendered and set this to GPU to increase the speed, we've now got this is actually fairly good lighting for this scene, and that's all it took. There was no fancy stuff going on. That was literally all it was. So let's go on with the floor. So if we select the floor and then go to materials, for some reason it's got some material that's shared with 5 other objects, so that's a bit strange. So if we just click on this 5 and set this to floor, and let's turn off caps lock. Why is caps lock even on? There we go. Click on use nodes, because obviously this is cycles, we're going to be using nodes. And also to save time with this whole rendering thing, if we press Shift B and just sort of drag a box around the inside of the camera's field of view, doesn't have to be perfect, just roughly, then it's only going to render stuff inside the camera rather than all this stuff around outside of the camera. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So now with the floor selected, we can get on with the materials. So if we just drag up the timeline here and just set this to the node editor and zoom in, we now have this diffuse node, and we're going to get rid of that. Believe it or not, there is one diffuse shader on this floor, and it's just for the tiny amounts of dirt in these cracks. The rest of it, all gloss, including these bits, and none of the gloss shaders have any coloration to them, so this should be fun explaining to you how all that works. So if we go to the shader, we're going to add in a gloss shader and simply plug it into the surface. And now we've got what is basically just a shiny floor. But one trick which I picked up from a Gleb Alexandrov tutorial that was uploaded a few weeks ago is using textures to adjust the roughness. And I'd done a bit of that in the past, but it never really looked good. But he's made this texture using things off Pixabay. I'll put a link in the description to his tutorial. I recommend you watch it. But in the description, he's got a link to his texture. I thought it's probably best if I send you the to the tutorial instead of just directly to the picture. It sort of helps him out. Okay, so if we go to texture, image texture, we're going to use the texture he provided. I'm hoping he's okay with that. Just go to textures, grime and grunge, and I think it's texture roughness.jpg. It is. Now you might think this is a strange texture. It's just this manky wall. But if we put this into the roughness of the glossy shader, you can see that's had an interesting effect. It's basically just increased the roughness. However, if we go and add in some RGB curves, and let's just go hardcore with this, set it to some high contrast stuff. So just click and drag something down here and bring this up here. What this will do is oh right, yeah, we got to unwrap the floor. I forgot about that. So with the floor, if we apply the scale, so with the floor selected, press Ctrl A, hit scale, and then come in and out of edit mode to just reset the particle system. Go back into edit mode, hit U, hit unwrap. It's now got the floor all unwrapped, and that's lovely. Go away, Skype. Thank you. So, with that being done, if we now look at this rendered, what we should get is something like this. If we just focus a bit on the floor, what we've got is some parts of the floor are pretty much diffuse, and the other parts are almost 100% gloss. So this is pretty good. Now this is a bit extreme. We're not going to have it at this kind of level. What I went for in the end was this sort of kind of bumpy kind of thing, sort of like kind of like that. In fact, I've got a screenshot on my phone of the exact thing, so it stops me having to fiddle around. Yeah, it's pretty much this. It's a bit over here and a bit there, and then this bit comes up to there. Alright, that's what I had for the original. And what this does is it kind of gives it a subtle difference in places. You can see areas like here and here, it's more visible on the sides. They're more glossy than other bits, I guess. But this is just the start. Another thing I did was also lowered the colour of this slightly by the looks of it. And what that does is it will just make the reflections a bit darker or a bit less. Oh, actually no, because it's not connected to a diffuser. All it's going to do is make them a bit darker. Okay, so there we go. And that's the first glossy shader. There are two more. No, one more. I think. Yes, one more. And sorry, it's just it took me a very long time to make this, and I sort of forgot how I did it. Okay, so if we have a... Okay, so now that that's done, we can get to work on the other shaders for this material. The first one I want to add in is that one diffuse shader I told you about, because that's what comes next. So if we add in a diffuse shader, okay, put that just up there, we can now add in a mix shader and just mix these two together. In this case, the glossy goes underneath and the diffuse goes on top. Oh, there we go. And the factor is controlled by an image texture that's also being used for the diffuse. So, okay, so basically the diffuse is just for the cracks in the ground. So if we open up the material that I used, which was something I found on Pixabay, which is a really good website for just random pictures of all sorts. I think it's probably in my grime and grunge collection. It's called Mud. So here we go. Yeah. Nice. Okay. This is going to go into the diffuse color, I think. Yep, that sort of works for me. And is that unwrapped? Right, yeah, we're going to need to do some stuff with the UVs with this. I remember, because this didn't look right at all. If we go to input and texture coordinate, we can get UV. And then if we go to vector mapping, plug the UV in here, and while it's here we may as well plug it in down here just in case for whatever reason it decides not to use the UV. then the vector goes into this, and this would have changed nothing, but what we can now do is set the scale of these you know, these settings here. So it's a 1 by 1.5, I believe, and that still doesn't look right, and I think that's because for some reason it had a 90-degree rotation on one of its axes. Let's try all of them. Apparently. Nope. Okay. Just nope. 0, 0, 0. Oh, I guess a smarter way to rotate it would be to rotate it in here. So yeah, go R90, and what that should do is change the rotation. If we just have the diffuse just going straight into the surface, we can see what's happening a bit clearer. And this is more or less what I had, just these cracks. Okay, so that's pretty cool. What we need to do with these now is run them through a color curve, because I wanted them to be a bit darker for the diffuse. So if we just get some RGB curves and just drop it like that, then that would just make it a bit darker, make it kind of earthier-ish. It didn't really make a difference, but it kind of worked. It did make a subtle change that I sort of preferred. Okay, and that's going into the diffuse, like so, so that's pretty cool. One other thing that we need to do is make this be in charge of the factor of mixing it with the glossy, and that's the main reason why this texture's here. Well, and the displacement, of course. The diffuse is just a tiny little detail. So if we go to color and brightness contrast and just put this image, ooh, move that down there, put this image into here, and then use the color of this to put that right into the factor there, then what we should do is, I think with the contrast, I think I set this to like a 3.5. In fact, if we just put this in the color of the diffuse, that would be a lot easier. Yeah, 3.5 just completely saturates the hell out of these. Oh, sorry, not saturates, just contrasts the hell out of these cracks. As you can see, they're solid black now. So if we put this back into the color of the diffuse, and then just throw this into the surface, throw the mix shader output into the surface of the material output, what we're now getting is a mixture between the what's it called, the glossy and the diffuse. As you can see, the cracks are now showing that diffuse color. Okay, so that's cool. One other thing is I had this affect the displacement of the scene. Was it that strong? Let's see, let's refer to my screenshot. No, it went through a mix shader, but actually, yes, it was that strong by all accounts, although I think maybe it didn't go through the brightness and contrast, so it was something like that. That looks much more plausible, and then that way we're also getting these sort of small bumps down here as well. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That's the floor sorted. Well, no. Sorry, that's part of the floor sorted. We are nowhere near done with this floor. Okay, so there was one other shader that I added, and that was for the puddles, I believe. Although one change I would like to make is I sort of want to make this kind of darker a bit. Although it might just be because all it's reflecting is grey at the minute, but you know, yeah, let's just leave that. We can make adjustments to it later. I might have a whole part dedicated to just fixing things up. Oh, I just realised. This is bad. We've got a seam right here. So to change that, if we just change the X location, we can just change it in whatever direction sends it back to wherever it came from. Apparently it's not the X direction that's causing it, it's probably the Y. Okay. Change the Y direction. Okay, now I don't know where it's gone. Well, if you can't see it... Oh wait, is it there? Is that it? Nope. Alright, it's probably just vanished off into one of the cells, or... Oh, wait, is that it? Found it. Okay. Just increase that more until it's just out of sight. I never had this problem in the first one, so yeah, that seemed to work. I think, was that a pun? That seemed to work. Anyway. Oh wait, no, it's back. It's right there. Okay, if we just rotate the image, the map, sorry, so go into edit mode and just come down here and rotate it by 90 degrees, then it's still there. I'll come out of edit mode, then that will reset it, and then it's gone. No, it's right there. Oh, good lord, this is never going to end, is it? Okay, now change the X amount. Alright, that's just pushing it back slowly. Oh, right, no, now we've got a crossroad of seams. Alright, if we just set the scale up to 1.5 along the X as well. Oh no, that will make it worse. If the scale's at 1. This is so weird, I never had this problem. Okay. If we just look at this in textured view, that'll probably save some time. Wait, but that's not responding to the UVs, is it? Wait, yeah, it is. That's strange. Oh, right, yeah, of course the location's going to be affecting the... Alright, sorry if there's a little interruption then. Someone walked into my room and I had to immediately pause. Okay, so, yeah, set the locations down to 0 and then that should have fixed it. According to the map. Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. These bars might also... They might trick me into thinking there was a seam and there might not have been. Anyway. Okay, so that's looking good. We just got one more glossy shader to add and also something to affect the displacement. And that is a texture that we're going to make ourselves. So that's marvellous. Okay, if we go down to the UV image editor, so just make this bigger because we're going to be using this now. Okay, it's called the UV image editor for a reason. We can edit images and textures in here. So if we go to image, new image, we can set the we can set the resolution for a new image. This would just mean it's a default color of black. So the width, I think I left like that, and then this, because it's roughly, in fact we've got the dimensions there, it's, I thought it was roughly 3 times the size, apparently not. If we just times this by 2, because it's more or less 2 times the size on the y-axis, then press OK. This is what we get. That's way too long, isn't it? Okay, if we, can we just delete images? Does that happen? Nah, we'll just add in a new one and just pretend that one doesn't exist. So if we go to new image again and just set this to 1024 times 1.5, because I can't be bothered to do the maths, it's apparently 1536. So 1024 by 1536. And hit OK. Nice. Now, at the moment we're not actually doing anything, but if we go to image and then save as image, and just save this here as puddle. Why is the caps key always turning on? That's not. Am I pressing it? No, that's weird. Yeah, puddlemap.png is fine, or JPEG, although I recommend PNG. And call this untitled 001 apparently, so that's cool. Okay, so if we go to texture paint and bring back this, then what we should be able to do is, that's painting on the wrong texture. Oh right, yeah, it's because we haven't actually imported the texture. So if we go to texture, image texture, and then set this to the untitled 001, we can now paint massive S if you want, or a smiley face, onto the texture. So that's cool. And we're not going to draw a smiley face. Well, I mean you can if you want to, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to draw puddles where we think puddles would look cool. So for my original, I had them around the back here, like so, just, you know, kind of flooding at the back. Oh, I just remembered one thing I did with the brush to get kind of a better result is if we go down to texture and give it a new texture, and then come over to our texture settings and find the texture that we just made and set this to a cloud. Then when we draw, we're drawing a little cloud on. Okay, so that's cool. Now what we're going to do is just draw around the back with this new cloud that we have. Just around the back like so, maybe pull it out a little bit. And the reason why we set this to cloud is so that, as you can see, we've got these little kind of bits where it sort of cuts in and out, and it just randomizes it all up a bit, so that's pretty cool. And if we set this to add, right, so under blend it says mix, to set this to add, what we can do is actually just draw straight over the top of the image, and what this will do is, well, the more white it is, then the more puddles will be there. Okay, so something like that will be good. And yeah, I mean, don't go too far, but sort of just try and make it gradually sort of come out there. So just, yeah, water at the back there is fine. And I also had like a puddle there and there, I think. That looks about alright, so yeah. If we just draw, sort of just click repeatedly in these sort of areas, like so, then we can draw on our little puddles. Okay, so that's looking good. You know what, this just looks too kind of placed, so if we just kind of play around with this puddle, maybe push it back over here. Maybe if you have like a little bit of this puddle sort of dribbling on over like around here, then that could look good. Okay, alright, awesome. That will look fine, I think. And if you want, you could also just sort of bring this out into the center a bit more, just a little bit like that. Okay, just, you know, whatever you think looks good, just go with it, I guess. So yeah, something like that works for me. Right, so now that we've done that, go to image and go to save image, and that's important because now when we close Blender, if we reopen it, then it will stay like that. Okay, so now we've got this image saved on our computer. It's basically just another texture that we have here. Alright, and we can just open it up like that so it's all proper, and apparently it still wants to call itself Untitled 001, so that's fine. Right, what this is doing in the displacement, I have got no idea, so let's take it out and let's just put that back in. I mean, this will be adding to the displacement in a bit, but for now we just want to get the shaders. In fact, should we just put in the displacement first? Yeah, okay. So the way we're going to do this is, because of course we've got puddles, and puddles aren't going to just have these crack shapes in them, because if there is a crack underneath the puddle, the water will just sit on top of the crack and you won't really be able to see it. So yeah, of course we need to adjust this displacement. So if we go to color, mix RGB, we need to get the things going in the displacement. So this texture, this needs to go into the top, this needs to come into the bottom, and wait, why is this going into the vector? Oh god, okay. Put the UV into the vector. Alright, nice. And what we want this to do is, so the darker areas are sort of pushing into the ground, so what we want is this to make it lighter. So if we put this into the factor actually, and then set this to mix, yep, and set this to white, then hopefully what we get is a floor, and around where the puddles are, we might still get a bit of diffuse, but if we just go hardcore with this displacement, then you'll see what I mean. Brightness, contrast, there we go. Set the contrast up to like 100 or something, just extreme. And as you can see, we're getting all these, you know, cracks or whatever in all the places where the puddles aren't, and the puddles are staying like that. Now this actually looks pretty cool, but we're not gonna go with this, although this could inspire so many things, because this actually looks pretty awesome. Alright, but yeah, so let's just put that in there, okay? And the only reason why we're still seeing the cracks is because of the diffuse shader. Alright, but now what we can do is if we go to shader and glossy, put that down here. No, up here, something like that, I don't know. Okay, and then go to shader, mix shader. What we can do is put this glossy down here and this mix shader up here. Get the texture we just made and make this go into the factor, and then put this into the surface, and then what we should get are these little puddles appearing. Maybe if we just set the roughness down to 0 and the colour all the way up to white, we'll be able to see them a bit more clearly. I think when we get different colours you'll be able to see them a bit easier, but you can see down here it's now reflecting the prison cells and over here as well. And you know, these cracks are too big. I kind of want to make them smaller like I did with the original. We could probably try that again, hopefully. 1.2 by 2. In fact, once we get the ivy over it, a lot of these seams aren't even going to be noticeable. So maybe 1.5. Okay. Yeah, that works. And I think I might add a bit of contrast to the displacement. According to my screenshot, I didn't in the original, but I kind of like what it did. Obviously, I'm not going to set it to 100 or something. I might just set it to like 2. Maybe not even that. Oh, yeah, of course, because it's affecting the little bumps up here as well, isn't it? 0.1. In fact, that's pointless, isn't it? If it's going to be 0.1, let's just not have it. Alright, sorry about that. I think there's a reason why I didn't edit the contrast. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. It's not looking like perfect right now. I think what we need to do is just edit the other materials as well. And then once it's got things to reflect and things to interact with, then it should look good. Okay, so alright, let's move on to the balcony. Now the balcony is very, very, very similar to the floor in terms of how it's set up. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to just copy the floor texture just, you know, by going here and clicking floor, but like, does the balconies not have the raw material? I just thought they would. Apparently the balcony doesn't exist. Okay, new material for the balcony, and we're going to call it balcony, as you probably expected. I don't even think these are called balconies, considering the context they're in, but that's what they're called now, so yay. Right, so we need to find where everything is, which is right down here. For some reason, this is now applied to 26 objects. Nope. This is just applied to the balconies. Okay, so yeah, make sure it's just applied to the balcony, otherwise I don't know what else is going to be affected by that, but weird stuff. So, okay, so once again, we're just going to go to shader, glossy, BSDF, plug this into the surface, and then go to add in the image texture from earlier, so texture, image text, apparently not, texture, image texture, okay. Set this to the roughness thing from earlier and plug this into the roughness. We've got a UV for the balcony, I believe. Yep, that's cool. So what we're going to do is add in the texture coordinate of UV. And now what we can do is just go to the RGB curves and fiddle with the roughness on the balcony. Alright, so as you can see, it's already kind of got its own little effect going on here, but I think what we're going to do is drop this down to here. Sorry, no, raise this up, because the lower it is, then the more reflective it is. In fact, I think if you had it around there and all I did was something like that in the end. Yep, apparently that's what I did. I think that looks about right. I mean, we're going to have displacements on it that will sort of determine a bit more. In fact, let's just do the displacements now. Okay, so if we go to texture, noise texture, throw the factor into the displacement, like so. And then if we just use the UV map for the vector, If we zoom in a bit more. Okay, if we increase the scale, then we should hopefully... In fact, let's also adjust the contrast of this, because otherwise it's going to be a bit too soft. So colour, brightness, contrast, just increase the contrast. Let's go with 100 again, just so I can show you what this is doing, although I think you probably already know. In fact, 100 is quite useful to let us know how big the texture is. So if we set the size to 100 as well, then we've got something like that. Maybe we set the detail to 10, and then bring the contrast back down to something like 2. Maybe even 1. Okay, there we go. What that's done is we've now got this nice rocky texture going along the sides, and if we lower this glossy amount a bit as well, then there we go. That's looking somewhat concrete-y. Rocky. It's looking quite rocky. There we go. Is that too much? Let's lower it a bit more. That's looking good. I quite like that. Alright, so if we zoom out, yep, that's looking pretty nice. One other thing I did to these was I added in a sort of leaking texture, like some random, like, just suspicious stains just all along the side here. So if I just duplicate this, then I've got... just realised every single texture other than for the ivy is from my grunge collection. Okay, so I used some sort of leaking texture. As for which one it was, it might have been 7. 7 rings a bell. I know I like 7. It was 7. Okay. Oh, drop my phone on my foot. Yeah. As for I got this texture, I'm pretty sure it came from Andrew Price's Architecture Academy, but there are so many similar ones on CG Textures, so you can take a look there, I guess. Okay, so with this, I'm gonna bring out the vector, which is there. If I go to mapping, is this still recording? Okay, good. It's just I paused it earlier. I wasn't sure if it resumed recording. It never tells me if it is. Sorry. Yeah. Put the UV in here. Put the vector into the grunge thing we just gave it, and let's just add in a diffuse shader, like so. There we go. Diffuse. If we just put the color in there and then the BSDF to the surface, then we can see exactly what's going on. And the stain is looking... there's one there, basically. So if we just change the location along the x-axis a bit... In fact, if we just go into textured view, this will be easier. There we go, just shuffle it along on the x-axis. Oh, wait, does it not work like that? Okay, material view then. Ah, here we go. Right, changing the scale on the... Oh, right, that's what I was doing. That's only changing the scale. The scale probably does need to change, so if we make this like 4 by 4 by 4, there we go, that's pretty cool. Now if we change the location along the y-axis, what we want to do is get the top of the stain sort of just down the sides, like that. Don't worry about it kind of clipping with this. We're going to have loads of ivy, it's not going to be noticeable, and even if it is, it's very subtle, like what we're going to do with it in the end, so no one's really going to notice. And I might just change the scale on the x-axis a bit, make it like, you know, look less fake. Something like that works. Okay, now if we use this as a factor, so if we put in a mix shader like this, if we get the contrast node from down here, plug this up here and set this as the factor, if we now change the contrast to, in fact we could probably view this in the material view again, that's pretty helpful. If we just set the contrast to 100 so we know we're doing it right, which we are, great. Could that work? Would 100 work? Yeah, 100 seems to work pretty well actually. So yeah, let's use that. And one other thing that I want to do is have this affect the bump map for the the diffuse. It needs to sort of bump it out a little bit. So we could put in a displacement, but I don't think that's necessary. What we need to do is if we go to vector bump, what we can do is stick the color into the height, and then this normal amount just goes into the normal amount of the diffuse. And that might make it go extreme. Although, wait, let's just bring these all out a little bit because it's getting a bit difficult to see what's happening. Okay. Right, if we set the strength up to, like, 100, we can see what we're doing a bit better. Apparently it's not doing anything if we put this in the gloss as well. Alright, I think that's probably working. But yeah, we're going to leave the strength at 1. And all that will do is just bump it out. And let's just take this out of the gloss, because it seems to be screwing it all up a bit. Okay. So yeah, there we go. We've got the grime around here now. And because of this, I think in fact, you know what, I might make the grime a bit less visible, because it kind of takes a lot away from the concrete. So what I'm going to do is, where's it going into the factor? Here we go. If I set the contrast down to about 5, not making much of a difference, about 1 maybe. Yeah, we can settle with 1. Just increase the colour of the gloss on increase the value of it. That should bring the shine back to it. Okay, and if we leave the contrast at 0, what would happen? Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. Let's just ignore contrast for the factor. And just, here we go. And originally this was supposed to be stains, but I realised this actually looks kind of like moss, so that's pretty good. Okay. So, that's the balcony done. If we now move on to the railings, that would be pretty good. So yeah, let's do that. Railings. Right, now these, they're not diffused, they are once again gloss, or glossy. Plug this into the surface. There we go. And set this to a very mild, sort of yellowy orange. Lower the value of it as well. Alright, and at the moment these look all clean and shiny, but we've done this a million times, you know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to texture, image texture, and add in that texture roughness JPEG, and put this into the roughness of this. And I think I'm going to go a little bit crazy. I'm going to go to color, RGB curves, and just make this quite a high contrast kind of thing, because we do want some gloss in places, but just, quite a lot of roughness as well, so something like that's looking okay. Could settle for that. Might push this up a little bit more, and then bring, ooh, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, no, we'll get rid of that bit. Didn't even mean to include that. Oh, it's the X button, isn't it? There we go. Okay. Alright. Move this over there. Maybe drop this a bit. Let's throw this over here. It's really just trial and error with this. And just play around until you get something that you think looks good. I think that looks alright. Okay. Now originally I also had a bump map on this. So I'm just going to throw this into the displacement, see what happens. Bit hardcore. In fact, yeah, if we get a brightness contrast node and just bring the contrast to like -4 for this. Still quite displacement-y, isn't it? The one problem with adding... Oh wait, oh. -1 seemed to work a lot better. Oh right, yeah, probably because it sort of set it to a minus value, so just the same kind of bump, but just minus, I guess. I don't really know. But yeah, that looks good. So that's the railings done. How long has this been recording for? 40 minutes. What else did it? Oh yeah, back wall and the ceiling. Okay. You probably figured this out. These are very similar to what we've just been doing. All of this part. We're just going to select it. Hit use nodes. Click on this form. Make this its own back wall material. Okay. Yeah, if we go, I'm just going to go full screen on the node editor because we know what this is going to look like and it's just slowing everything down. So yeah, if we get rid of the diffuse, go to shader, glossy shader, throw in that texture from earlier, like so, into the roughness. The contrast for this one's going to be quite low, like, you know, somewhere like there. Okay, that'll do. And there's going to be a mix shader, and that will go into the bottom. And in the top, we're going to have a image texture, and this image texture is going to be, if I find the textures, where's my grunge? Here we go. It's texture that I got from CG Textures. No idea where or when I got it from. The only reason why I don't put links in the description to my textures is because I don't know where I get them from. I just pick them up as I go along and store them in a huge folder just for textures. So yeah, okay, this one, if you can find something like this, then that's great. And what this will do is, if we get the UV thingy, input, texture coordinate, UV into both of them, we might bring out the mapping node for this one, but we'll see. This will go into the color of a diffuse shader, and then this will go into here. Okay, and as you can see, should we also put this into the factor of this, so we can play around with where it's diffuse and where it's glossy. Let's see if we adjust the contrast settings. I think if we adjust the colors and the contrast for both of them, like both the thing in the color of the diffuse and the factor of the mix shader, I think we might be onto something with that. Okay, something like that. Okay, so if we just drop this, okay, and then that's not too bad. Yeah, let's leave it like that. That's pretty okay. You might be thinking there'll be a few splashes on the wall from where these puddles have been, but I mean, yeah, you can add little tiny sprays of water if you want, but I think that'd be a bit over the top, so I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I think that's looking okay. If I maybe bring these two bits down, we might get a bit more gloss. I mean, you really don't want to go too far on this, because this wall shouldn't be too shiny. But yeah, I think that works. Okay. So yeah, before we do the ceiling, I just want to say I'm hoping you've realised just how easy it can be just using glossy shaders to get all kinds of results. Because if you think about it, we've got like one diffuse thing for the Mosserian, one for the colour of the cracks. That's the point. We didn't finish the floor. There's something I forgot to include. Let's do that now. So with the floor, we have the water map, the puddles over here. But one thing, I mean, it won't make too much of a difference because the puddles are going to look very similar to the cracks. But water, really, if it's forming here, then it should really form in all the cracks as well. So what I did was, if we come down here, okay, yeah, what I did was I went to the glossy shader, got the mix shader here. Part of the factor is going to, of course, be this, but also if we get the cracks from earlier, which are somewhere right here, okay, if we get these two together like this, get a mix RGB, and yeah, if we also get RGB curves for this, the cracks, put this into here, and then if we just increase this, then eventually like sort of the outside edges of the cracks should turn white. Oh wait, no, do we want that? Yes, do we? Okay, hold on. Just trying to remember exactly what. In fact, oh, I've got that screenshot on my phone. I can tell you exactly, because I don't really remember this too well. As you can see, it's quite complicated. Says here that for the factor, right, I got something like this, and I just inverted it and put that in the top of the mix shader. So if we go to color, invert, like, oh, that, okay. It got inverted, factor of 1, yep, and then the water was also included, and for some reason that was going through a similar set of RGB curves. So in fact, I probably should tell you why. I think the reasoning would be I was what's the shaders are, oh, that's why the shader was a screen, so I wanted it to show through over so the mud, the cracks, I was increasing the brightness of it, and then they would be screening over the puddles, meaning that it's kind of like adding, but it's hard to explain. Consider screening as being just like adding, I guess. Okay, so now we can put this into the factor, and this wouldn't have made much of a difference. In fact, probably you're thinking, what is the difference? The difference is that now, you can sort of see it here, the water is appearing inside the cracks, and that's another reason why you don't need a huge displacement. It's because the water's in the cracks, like that. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get on with the ceiling now that that's been done. So ceiling, you've probably figured it out. It's just glossy, like every other material. And if we click on this 3 here, we can set this to ceiling. And we just have to find where they are. Okay, here we go. Get rid of the diffuse, put in a glossy shader, throw that in there. The texture I used was the same one. Okay, but this time I think it also went into the color, but it had a mix shader on it. So if we go to mix RGB, I kind of mixed this up with this kind of greenish color, like that sort of thing, maybe a bit darker, somewhere around there probably, and that will just affect the color a little bit. So if we take a look at what the ceiling looks like just with this, then okay, then yeah, there you go. If we maybe increase the factor, then it, well, if increase factor all the way to the top, it's going to be really, really green. But if we just bring it down slightly, then it's just going to be like this subtle sort of green. If I find the render, you can see it's not noticeably green at all actually, so something like that is probably what I had in the end. And if we go to the RGB curves for the image texture, then just play around with this slightly. You don't want too much contrast, but you know, you want to have sort of noticeable amounts of gloss. So yeah, if we play around with that, maybe push him further to the right, that might add more gloss to the scene. Maybe even drop this down a bit. Right, yeah, might be something to do with the UVs. No, that's why it's only applying to this at the minute. If we select the actual ceiling mesh and add in ceiling, there we go, then what we should get is something looking fairly good. too green? Or is it just too reflective? Well, let's first of all increase the roughness amount. And to do that, you just add in the bits. Or push these up even. Okay, let's do that a bit. And you know what? I think the texture here could do with a bit of, I guess, squishing down a bit like that. Just a little bit. And yeah, that should look pretty much there. Maybe if we lower the factor down on this a bit more now that we know what's going on. Okay. There we go. I'm happy with that. Alright, so I think that's the end of part 1 of the whole shaders and materials. In the next part we'll get on with the prison cells, the bits on the floor, the lights, and I think that's probably the only materials that need to be done. So yeah, okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you in part 4, where, like I say, we'll be making extra shaders and whatever for the other bits and pieces. But yeah, thanks for watching. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And I hope you're learning. I hope you're doing well with this. It's quite a challenging project, I'll give you that. So yeah, thanks for watching and goodbye.